All right, let's get right into it. There is a massive diplomatic firestorm erupting over Greenland. But this is way more than just some argument over territory. This is a crisis that's shaking the very foundation of NATO, the Western world's most powerful military alliance. And honestly, it's threatening to tear it apart from the inside. Just listen to that. That's a direct quote from the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. I mean, it's an absolutely stunning warning shot fired directly at the United States. It really lays out just how incredibly high the stakes are here. So the question is, how did we even get to this point? And that warning from the Prime Minister, that phrase, NATO is finished, it really gets to the heart of this section. Because what we're witnessing is something totally unprecedented. This is a threat to the alliance that isn't coming from some outside enemy, but from within, from its most powerful member. So how on earth did we get here? How did a disagreement over a massive ice-covered island in the Arctic manage to push a 75-year-old alliance, one built specifically for collective defense, right to the edge of collapse? To figure that out, we've got to look at the key players and the events of the last few days. Okay, so the immediate trigger is President Trump's long-standing interest in buying Greenland. But this time, it's different. He's framing it as a critical issue of national security. And he's not entirely wrong about its strategic value. Greenland is vital for missile defense, it overlooks key Arctic shipping routes, it's a huge counterweight to Russia and China in the region, but it's the timing of this demand, coming right after another very aggressive U.S. action that has set off every single alarm bell in Europe. And if you look at this timeline, you can see how this whole thing just exploded. It really starts simmering back in December when Danish intelligence, for the first time, flags the U.S. as a potential security risk. But then it just accelerates like crazy. On Saturday, the U.S. launches a military op in Venezuela. The very next day, Trump brings up Greenland again. By Monday, the Danish PM is talking about the end of NATO. And by Tuesday, Europe's leaders have circled the wagons. We're talking a full-blown crisis in just a handful of days. Now, to really understand why Europe is panicking, we have to talk about that event I just mentioned, the Venezuela precedent. Seriously, what just happened in Caracas is the key to understanding why these threats against Greenland are being taken so seriously. So what went down? Well, U.S. forces launched a jaw-dropping military strike right in Caracas. They captured President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, flew them to New York to face criminal charges, and then announced that the U.S. would basically run Venezuela until a new government was in place. It was an incredibly bold move that set a whole new precedent for American intervention. And this is what makes the situation with Greenland completely different. It's night and day. And frankly, it's so much more dangerous. See, Venezuela isn't a U.S. ally, and Washington claimed its government was illegitimate. But Greenland, it's part of Denmark, a founding member of NATO, with clear, undisputed sovereignty. And intervention there, well, it's not just some controversial foreign policy decision. It's an unthinkable challenge to the very soul of the NATO alliance. It's an attack on the family, so to speak. That unthinkable challenge has triggered something remarkable, which brings us to our next section. A continent united. This threat against one of their own prompted an immediate, unified diplomatic front from all across Europe. This was the core message, right here. It came from a joint statement from all the major European powers. It's a crystal clear, forceful defense of national sovereignty. The statement is basically a direct rebuke to the idea that anyone other than Greenlanders and Danes gets to decide Greenland's future. Period. And just look at this wall of support. This wasn't some minor statement from a few small countries. We're talking about the leaders of Europe's heavyweights signing on. France, Germany, the UK, Italy, Spain, Poland, all of them standing shoulder to shoulder with Denmark. That shows you just how seriously this threat is being taken in capitals all over the continent. But perhaps the most blunt take of all came from the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. One for all and all for one. Otherwise, we're finished. Wow. That single quote just transforms this crisis from a dispute over an island into an existential test for the very idea of European unity. And that brings us to the real, terrifying bottom line of all this, the alliance at risk. This is so much bigger than Greenland or Denmark. What we're talking about here is a direct threat to the entire security order that has kept the peace in Europe for more than 75 years. And it all comes down to this one single, incredibly important idea, collective defense. This is the bedrock of NATO.
It's the sacred promise that an attack on one member is an attack on all members. It is the absolute guarantee that has prevented war and deterred aggression against its members for decades.
And here's the thing that's just so mind-blowing about this whole crisis. That core principle, that sacred promise, it's now being threatened from the inside. In the entire history of NATO, no member has ever used military force against another member. The very idea was supposed to be impossible, unthinkable.
So what's at stake here isn't just a treaty. As the Danish Prime Minister said herself, what's being jeopardized is the security that has been provided since the end of the Second World War. If that core promise of the alliance is broken by its own most powerful member, the entire system of global security could simply fall apart.
Which leaves all of us with this final, deeply unsettling question. Can an alliance, any alliance, truly survive when its own members begin to fear each other more than they fear any outside enemy? The answer to that question is going to define the future of Western security for generations to come.